The Buffalo Bills 2023 schedule has been released. We're breaking it down from 16. That's right, 16 different angles today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and of course, a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, the schedule is out. We know the road ahead for the Buffalo Bills in 2023. We knew the opponents, and that's great. But seeing how it lays out is what really matters, and we have the time now to reflect on what this path is for the Buffalo Bills in 2023. So I'm going to break this schedule down from 16 different angles. This is how I approach a schedule. When I look at a schedule, these are the things that are on my mind. And so I'm going to share it all with you here today on Locked On Bills. Let's start with the preseason. And this is probably the least interesting part of the conversation we'll have, but I want to acknowledge the preseason. The Bills have 3 games. The first one is at home against the Colts. Then they go to the Steelers, to the Bears for the preseason. And I always like to look at these games, these teams, and think about what challenges they present in terms of the type of schemes that they run and how that might prepare the Bills for what's coming during the regular season. And so with the Colts, I think the compelling thing there is Anthony Richardson, rookie quarterback, number 4 overall pick out of Florida. I'm sure he's going to play a lot in that game. He's an extremely athletic quarterback, and so that'll be nice for the Bills. It's an even front defense there with Gus Bradley, too high type defense. The Steelers with Kenny Pickett, a very quick passing game style of offense. I'm sure Kenny Pickett, this will probably be your dress rehearsal type game, and so he'll play an extended amount of time. They've got some good pass rushers, obviously. And I like that it's an odd front defense, and so stylistically a different one there for the Colts, so the Bills can have something else to prepare with. And then, of course, Chicago, another team with a running quarterback in Justin Fields. And then defensively, it's an even front defense led by Matt Eberflus, so a lot like what the Colts run. So that's what the Bills have on tap for the preseason. All right, now let's get into what we're here to talk about. That's this regular season schedule. And I want to start by talking about the opener and the opening stretch of games. The opener, Monday Night Football in New Jersey against the Jets. And I'll tell you what, I think that is the perfect time to get the Jets, and especially to get them on the road. Now, we're going to have a long wait, right? We're going to watch every other Week 1 football game before we get to watch the Buffalo Bills. And it's quite different than last year, right? It was the first game of Week 1 last year. The Bills played the Rams on opening night of the season. And now we have to wait for the last game of Week 1 this year. But with Aaron Rodgers coming over to this football team, it's going to take some time for that to gel and come together. I don't expect them to be peaked at Week 1, right? It's going to take some time, even if Nathaniel Hackett's familiar with Aaron Rodgers. And I reference Nathaniel Hackett because he's the offensive coordinator. They spent time together in Green Bay, but a lot of new pieces that they have to put together. I think getting them in Week 1 at their place is a great time to get them. Aaron Rodgers, the last couple of years, has not played well in Week 1. And so I think this stacks up favorably for the Bills. And what I'm labeling a gotta-have-it game. Folks, the New York Jets hype is really, really crazy. And if they come out and beat the Bills in Week 1, it's going to get even crazier. And so you got to squash that quick. You can't let them get this game. So got to have a game for the Bills, in my opinion. We can't be having this Jets hype getting any more crazy than it already is. So I think that's a great opening game. Obviously, a primetime game, that's always fun. And I think you get the Jets at a good time. And then to round out that opening stretch, and what I mean by the opening stretch is the first 4 games of the season. So week 1 at the New York Jets for Monday Night Football. Week 2, your home opener against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that's a good home opener. You definitely want an opponent that you feel like you can get a win against, right? And the Raiders coming across the country, a new quarterback there in Jimmy Garoppolo, a team that the Bills will have a talent advantage over. I think that's a good home opener for the Bills. Then week 3 at Washington, and then week 4 you host the Miami Dolphins before the trip to London to play Jacksonville in week 5. And I think the Bills got a chance to be 3-0 entering that Miami home game in week 4 before that Jacksonville trip. So that opening stretch stacks up pretty favorably to me. You got 2 at home, 2 on the road. And I think, obviously 2 division games baked in there, but all games I think the Bills have a good chance of claiming to start the season. So that's the opener and the opening stretch. Now let's move into standalone games, your primetime games, if you will. The Bills got 6 primetime games. And primetime games only count in terms of Thursday night football, Sunday night football, Monday night football. So like the Jacksonville game in London, it's a standalone game. It's the only show in town, but it's a 9:30 kick on a Sunday. So the NFL doesn't qualify that as a primetime game. So the max you can get is 6, and the Bills got 6. Week 1, we already talked about it. Monday Night Football at the Jets. And then, of course, there's the London game. I want to acknowledge it as a standalone game. 9:30 a.m. kick in week 5. Then you have week 6, Sunday Night Football. You are hosting the Giants. That's coming out of the London game. Week 8, Thursday Night Football, hosting the Bucks. Week 9, Sunday Night Football in Cincinnati. Week 10, Monday Night Football hosting the Broncos. And then Week 15 in LA to face the Chargers on Sunday Night Football on a Saturday. And that's going to be a weird game because it's streaming exclusively on the Peacock app. And so I learned what the Peacock app is today, and I guess I got to get that so I can watch Bills against the Chargers because I don't plan on being in the stadium at SoFi Stadium 2 days before Christmas in LA. So we will have to all figure out how to get the Peacock app and watch a football game. So you got 6 primetime games, and you have 7 standalone games right now. And obviously there's some flex opportunities that could be presented to the Bills later on. Games could get flexed into primetime. And so right now, that's what we're looking at in terms of the standalone games and the primetime games. The Bills, like I said, they're one of the teams that got the maximum amount of primetime games with 6. That puts them with the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Cowboys. Only 4 teams got 6 standalone games. And then you have the Jets, Packers, Vikings, Raiders, Eagles, 49ers, and Giants with 5. So the Bills are in that upper tier there with the Chiefs, Chargers, and Cowboys as teams that are scheduled right now for 6 primetime games. The Texans, Falcons, Cardinals, and Colts don't get any. The next thing I want to talk about is the bye week. The Bills' bye week this year is week 13. And it's sandwiched between at Philadelphia to play the Eagles and at Kansas City to play the Chiefs. Seems like a pretty decent time to get it. I think with bye weeks, you want them to be a little bit later in the season, probably after week 9. And the Bills get it week 13, a pretty late bye. And I know Josh Allen, even on Kyle Brandt's Basement, said that he hopes the bye's later in the season. And here's the deal. I want to talk a little bit about, Super Bowl winners and the bye week, but the Bills have to play better coming off the bye. This is something that if you've been listening to this podcast for a number of years now, it's a criticism that I've had towards this football operation is that while the Bills are 6-0 coming off the bye under Sean McDermott, right, a perfect record, all of those games were lackluster performances where they just didn't play good ball. And you're going to need to play your best ball coming out of the bye this year against Kansas City. And so I like that it's week 13. I like, in theory, that it's before the Kansas City game, but the Bills have to play better than they have off the bye this time around to keep that record unblemished. Now, we've also, over the years, we've kind of talked about the bye week and it being later in the season is a good thing, and there's a correlation towards late bye weeks and Super Bowl winners. So let me tell you when the bye week of the past 10 Super Bowl winners was. And of course, I'm going to start with the Chiefs last year. Their bye week was week 8. But the 2021 Rams, week 11, 2020 Bucks, week 13, 2019 Chiefs, week 12, 2018 Patriots, week 11, 2017 Eagles, week 10, 2016 Patriots, week 9, 2015 Broncos, week 7, 2014 Patriots, week 10, and the 2013 Seattle Seahawks, week 13. And so they're all beyond week 10 except for 3. Right? You have week 8, week 9, week 7. So 7 of the last 10 Super Bowl winners had a bye week later than week 10. And so you're happy that the Bills fall into that when it comes to the bye week. Now they just got to play better coming off the bye than they typically do. All right, we got a bunch more to get to here as we reflect on the Bills' 2023 schedule. But first, I need to tell you about Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want a bunch of sugar and calories, then you got to try the best tasting protein bar in the world, and that's Built Bars. They're healthy and they're delicious. They're delicious because they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in great flavors. And in fact, they just released a limited time flavor, the white chocolate birthday cake. I've already got 2 boxes on the way. You can get the peanut butter puffs. They got churro, coconut almond, brownie batter, so many great flavors. But like I said, they're healthy. It's like you're eating a candy bar, but it's good for you. Like I said, low calorie, low sugar, high in protein. So check them out. You can go to built.com, order yourself a box, use our promo code LOCKEDON15. You get 15% off your next order, or you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick up a box off the shelf. Folks, try them. You will thank us later. I think I only got into 4 of my 16 angles, so we got a bunch more to get to here today. Let's now move on to the 1 o'clock kickoffs, right? That classic Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. Folks, that ain't going to happen a lot this year for the Buffalo Bills. They've only got 5 Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoffs. That's it, 5 out of 17 games. And they happen early, and then that's it. You get week 2, 3, 4, and 7, and then week 17. That's it. Every other game is not at Sunday at 1 p.m. In fact, there is a 10-week gap and a 9-game stretch between Sunday 1 o'clock kicks. So week 7 against the Patriots and week 17 against the Patriots. Everything in between there is not at Sunday at 1 o'clock. So if you like that routine of Sunday 1 p.m. Eastern time kickoffs, I got bad news for you. You're not going to get a whole lot of that this year. Now let's move on to the rest advantages for the Bills in the schedule and rest disadvantages. And so what I mean by that is when the team has more time to prepare based on when their last game was played. And so the Bills have 4 situations this year where they have a rest advantage and 3 where they have a disadvantage. And I think you're going to like how this stacks up. In terms of rest advantages, week 9 at Cincinnati, the Bills play Thursday night football the week prior, so they get a little extra time to prepare for the Bengals on the road. Week 11 at the Eagles, the Eagles actually play on Monday Night Football the week before against the Chiefs. And so we'll catch the Eagles on a short week. Week 14 against the Chiefs in Kansas City, the Bills are coming off their bye week, so they'll have a significant rest advantage. And then week 17 against the Patriots, the Bills play on the Saturday prior against the Chargers before playing the Patriots. So those are 4 games where you have a rest advantage. And there's 3 where the Bills have a rest disadvantage, starting with week 2 against the Raiders because the Bills play Monday Night Football week 1 against the Jets. So they have a shorter week there. Week 10 against the Broncos. That's a primetime game in Buffalo, and Denver is actually coming off of their bye week, so they're going to have some extra time to prepare for Buffalo. And then Week 16, when the Bills play in LA to face the Chargers are playing Thursday Night Football the week prior, so the Chargers will have a little extra rest for their matchup against the Bills. The next thing I want to look at is the great quarterbacks, right? It's a quarterback-driven league. Who are the great quarterbacks that the Bills have to face? And I think there's 3 of them. I'm going to put Aaron Rodgers in this group. I know he wasn't great last year, but the previous 2 seasons, he was the NFL MVP. And week 1 and 11, you got to deal with him. Joe Burrow, obviously, week 9, and Patrick Mahomes, week 14. So those are your like upper echelon, elite caliber quarterbacks. And you still got some good quarterbacks left to play. You got Trevor Lawrence in week 5, Tua Tagovailoa with the Dolphins week 4 and 18. And I know that maybe some of you are wondering why I mentioned him as a good quarterback. I mean, look at the season he had last year. He was terrific. Year 2 with those receivers and Mike McDaniel's offense, he's going to be productive. Daniel Jones, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but he's paid like he is. That's in week 6. Russell Wilson was awful last year, but we know what he's done in the NFL. He's got Sean Payton now as his head coach. That's week 10. Jalen Hurts, who for a minute there was the highest paid player in NFL history. The Bills got him in week 12 against the Eagles. Dak Prescott, week 15. Justin Herbert, week 16. And then, I mean, they have Mac Jones, week 7 and 17. I don't really consider him a great quarterback, but I'm just trying to be mindful of the quarterback matchups. So those are your, I guess, established quarterback matchups, and the emphasis being on Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, and Patrick Mahomes. I also like to look at the rookie quarterbacks, and the Bills probably aren't going to face a rookie quarterback this year. You look at the teams that picked one in the first round, the Panthers, Colts, Texans, right? Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. The Bills don't play any of those 3 teams. The Titans picked Will Levis with pick 33. The Bills don't play the Titans this year. I think that's the first time in a while they don't play Tennessee. So you have no real paths to playing a rookie quarterback. I think it's unlikely that the Bills will see one. In fact, the little nugget that I dug up studying this schedule is that every quarterback the Bills are scheduled to face in 2023 is either a first-round pick on a rookie deal that is entering at least their 3rd season, or a quarterback that is being paid at least $40 million per season, with the exception of 3 games. Week 2, Jimmy Garoppolo with the Raiders. Week 3, Sam Howell with the Washington Commanders. He was a 2022 5th-round pick that's scheduled to be their starter this year. And then Week 8 against the Bucs, I figure that'll be Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, but probably Baker Mayfield. So you're probably wondering, well, how many teams don't fit that criteria? 14. And so that's the Bills aren't touching many of these teams that have like a really shaky quarterback situation. A lot of established quarterback situations are on the schedule for the Bills. Let's look next at the potential weather games, right? Where weather could be an impact. Whether it's hot or cold. Now, the rain, I don't know if it's going to rain or not, right? That's always a possibility, and wind's always a possibility. But when I look at the potential extreme heat games and extreme cold games, there's only one heat game, and it's week 18 in Miami. That's going to be in January. I mean, it's not going to be scorching, right? It might be a lot warmer than what the Bills are going to be used to playing in Western New York and living in Western New York, but they're only trip to somewhere where it's hot is week 18 in Miami. The cold weather games, there's not really that many of those either. You got at Kansas City December 10th, then you're hosting Dallas December 17th, and you're hosting New England December 31st. But when you look at the Bills' other December games, it's at the Chargers, right? And at Miami. So until the playoffs, I mean, the Bills could be in good shape here when it comes to not having to face, a ton of crazy cold weather games. The next thing that I look at is the home and away distribution. And when I examine this schedule, I think it's pretty balanced. I mean, I guess you can say that 4 of the last 6 are on the road, but the bye week is sandwiched in there. And they are all tough road opponents at the Eagles, at the Chiefs, at the Chargers, at the Dolphins. But the only time that the Bills play consecutive games in the same stadium is weeks 10 and 11 at home against the Broncos and Jets. And so, I mean, there's not any like long stretches of home or away games, to be honest with you. I guess week 6 through 11 you can look at. You have 4 of 6 at home, and your 2 road games are pretty short trips to Cincinnati and New England. So I guess you could say that week 6 through 11 is kind of your home stretch, 4 of 6 at home, and your stretch there after the bye, 4 of 6 on the road. But for the most part, it's pretty balanced. And like I said, there's only one time all season where the Bills play consecutive games in the same stadium, and that's weeks 10 and 11 at home against the Broncos and the Jets. All right, folks, we got a bunch more to talk about with this schedule, including the Von Miller effect, what I like about the schedule, what I wish were different. Just need to take a quick break. I'll be right back. All right, let's talk about the Von Miller effect. And I did this last year. It was called the Tre'Davious White effect, where I kind of talked about, all right, where does his return make sense? Where are we going to see Von Miller for the first time? And last year, my prediction was the Green Bay game for the Bills coming out of the bye. And people yelled at me for that. You guys said I was crazy. And then he didn't come back for like several more weeks after that. It was Thanksgiving. And so with Von Miller, my expectation is that he's going to start the season on the PUP list. And if that's the case, he's got to be on it for a minimum of 4 weeks. And so the earliest I think we'll see him, the absolute earliest, is the London game in week 5 against Jacksonville. If I had to guess, I'd say week 6 against the Giants for the earliest. I don't know if the Bills are going to deal with having to bring Von all the way to Europe and all that stuff. They'll probably just want him to stay and finalize his rehab. But I think week 6 is the earliest against the Giants. But the bottom line here, and I keep coming back to this, is that when it comes to Von Miller, nothing should be rushed, especially when your real challenging stretches, we're going to talk about that in a minute, or later on in the schedule, and you need Von Miller for that stretch and you need him for the playoffs. You don't want to live in this world where you don't have Von Miller for the most important games like you did last year. And there's just no reason to rush him back. If it's week 8, 9, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. It's as long as it's not rushed, and when he's back, he's ready to be Von Miller. But I think the earliest is going to be week 6 against the Giants. So the Bills will have to navigate those early games without Von Miller, most likely. Let's talk about some tough stretches, right, where you can kind of see where things get really challenging. I think there's 2 really tough stretches on the schedule. Maybe weeks 4 through 6, where you have the Dolphins, and then that Jags game in London, which we've talked about is a ridiculous situation. The Bills are already losing a home game to London, whatever. That's fine. I'm happy for our friends in Europe that they get a chance to watch the Bills. I'm not happy that the Jaguars, who always play in London, will be playing in London the week before. And so they get a chance to be really comfortable with the time switch and the elements of being there. And I think that gives them a major advantage. Now, like I said in the podcast yesterday, you're hopeful that, it's a situation where the Jaguars are just ready to get home, right? They don't want to be away for that long from their families and their homes, and that they're going to want to get out of town, and maybe the Bills catch them in that way. But that's a tough situation. So you got the Dolphins, Jags, and then you're coming back right away and playing. You're playing the Giants at home. And the Bills, if you play an international game, you get the choice of having your bye right after it. And obviously the Bills said no. They said they don't want to have a bye in week 6 and that they'll just get right back to playing football games. And so they got a game in London against the Jags right into a home game the following week against the Giants. So I think that's a little tough stretch. And then weeks 9 through 16, I think that's really that's the defining stretch of the schedule for the Bills, where you have at Bengals, home against the Broncos, home against the Jets, at the Eagles, at the Chiefs, Dallas at home, and then at the Chargers. I think that's right there. You want to be really in good shape entering that, and you want to weather that stretch the best you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games right there. You can get out of that 5-2, at worst 4-3. That's going to be pretty reasonable. That's a tough stretch of football games. And so weeks 9 through 16, I think, is where you're really going to learn who the Buffalo Bills are. I want to talk about the closing stretch of games, right? You always talk about playing your best football late in the season. And, if you're in a situation where you got to rip off some wins, what does it look like? And that happened, right? I mean, go back to that. Was it 2 years ago, the 2021 season? The Bills were 7-6 after that Bucs loss. And I'm like, they need to run the table here. And then they did. They won 4 in a row, finished 11-6, won the division. And so what does that closing stretch look like? Well, week 15, you host the Cowboys. Then you're at the Chargers. You host New England. You're at Miami. That's your closing stretch. So if you got to go on a run, you got on a little heater here to win the division or clinch a playoff spot or something like that, that's what you're staring at. And so, that's not easy. I mean, New England's your easiest game in there potentially. And then, I mean, you're fortunate Dallas is coming to your place, but that's not something you look at and say, wow, yeah, they can. If they need to go 4-0 to close it out, they can definitely do it. So you got some challenges there with your closing stretch. The next thing I want to bring up here is where can the Bills make some runs, right? One thing that's important for great football teams is that they go on runs and they stack wins. And the Bills have done that. Obviously, look at their records year over year. 13-3 last year, 11-6. They're 13-3 the year before that, right? 10-6 the year before. So they've had some really good records, and part of that's because they can stack wins. And I think this early slate of games is very favorable to the Bills. Obviously, I'm a little concerned about that Miami into London into the Giants. But early on, you should be able to stack some wins. I think there's a chance they could be 7-1, 8-0 going into that Cincinnati game. And so I think the Bills, it's really important for them to start strong this year and really stack those wins and set themselves up well going into that weeks 9 through 16 stretch. At worst, 6-2. At worst. But I'm hopeful for 7-1 or 8-0 going into Cincinnati. I think that's where they can really make a run. Let's close out with 2 different talking points. One being things I wish were different about the schedule, and then things I love about the schedule. We'll start with things I wish were different. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about the actual opponents, the home and away split. There's nothing you can do about that. This is stuff that is there's a recipe to how they make the schedule every year. We've known who the opponents are. So I'm not going to focus on that. Things I wish were different. Obviously, the Jaguars game. I've talked about this enough. But what I will say here a little bit different is that I wish that the game was later in the season and that the Bills could take their bye week after. I think that makes that favorable stretch that I talked about at the beginning, that kind of spoils it a little bit, knowing that you got to go to London and come back and play again. And I'm sure the Bills would have loved to take in their bye week after that, but it's too early in the season. They wanted the later bye. They got the later bye. So that's the trade-off there. But I wish that game was later so that they could take their bye week after. I like to play Denver earlier than week 10. Sean Payton's coming into this situation with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I think eventually they're going to play a lot better football than they did last year, but I don't think it's going to be early in the season. And by week 10, they could probably have a lot figured out and them really hitting their stride. So I wish that game was earlier in the season. And then obviously the rest disadvantages. I think you're excited about the rest advantages, but you got the Broncos coming off of their bye. What else was in there that let me scroll back up to my notes. The Chargers, they get extended rest, an extra 4 days before playing you on a Saturday at their place. And then a minor gripe about week 2. I can hardly complain about playing the Raiders after Monday Night Football against the Jets, but you never love rest disadvantages, except it's an inevitable part of any schedule. Things I love about this schedule, I talked about at the beginning. I really like opening with the Jets on the road. I think that's the perfect time to get them. I think it's good for the Bills to get the Raiders and Commanders early, 2 teams that have a lot of newness, right? New quarterbacks. The Commanders have a new offensive coordinator. I don't think they're very good football teams, either of them, and so I think getting them early is good. I like that there's no heat games, right? You're not going to Miami early. There's no Jacksonville game. There's no Tampa game. You're not playing in any of these hot, scorching conditions. That won't be part of the mix this year. I like that some of the extended rest opportunities that they get. You get extra rest before your 3 hardest games, in my opinion, which is at the Eagles, at the Bengals, and at the Chiefs. Those are clearly your 3 hardest games, and you get extended rest before all 3 of them. I think that's something I obviously love about the schedule. And the last thing is just a chance to start hot. I really do think that the Bills can be no worse, or should be no worse than 6-2 entering that Cincinnati game. Good chance they could be 7-1, even 8-0. And so I think that opportunity to start hot and stack wins early is going to be a good thing for this football team. So that's what I love about the schedule. There you have it, folks. 16 different angles here. We looked at this schedule through. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you felt like this was comprehensive and that you can really digest the road ahead for the Buffalo Bills in 2023. I'm very, very, very excited about next week on the podcast. I don't want to tell you exactly what it is because there's some things that I have to do this weekend that's reliant on other people for it all to come together. And so I don't want to put myself in a position where I say one thing and can't deliver. But my intent is for Monday, Tuesday to be some really fun content on the podcast. So don't miss it. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. If you're enjoying this podcast, tell a friend. But you know what would mean a lot to me? If you just shared it on social media. Post a tweet, post a Facebook status, post it on Instagram, retweet what I tweet. That's so helpful. I really, really appreciate it. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, hit it with a like. Make sure that you're subscribed. All of that is so helpful. All right, folks, hope you have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again on Monday.